Balarama Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Dear Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
So let us continue on the topic of the Varnasrama College and continuing on with the morning walk which Srila Prabhupada gave in Vrindavan on March 12th, 1974. And so he continues on the different reasons why he wants to do Varnasrama College, to train people, general populace, on to somehow like correct the different ills in the modern society. He touched on many different points, and to do with unemployment and how it causes demoniac mindset if one is free, and also lazy, and and also harassment by the government, by which even sincere people who want to work, they are being taxed so much that it becomes very tough for them to live. And like nowadays, we are seeing the heavy vaccinations, heavy so many regulations, and people, so many other reasons people don't want to be part of, don't want to be under the control of this government to a large extent. So, but to create an alternative society, it is not easy. It's not easy at all, because not only we are used to living in a certain manner, but also the mindset is like that. So why I was hoping we go through these verses is because the mindset starts to also, we start thinking about all these things. What through a acharya, through a great spiritualist, he is looking at the material world and through the eyes of the scriptures, and seeing it and speaking, so that our mind also, by hearing, starts to think like that. So let us carry on with this morning walk. We stopped at around here, where he was talking about unemployment.
They do not feel inspired. They do not feel inspired. No one has desire.
That means mismanagement. You had no desire to take to Krishna consciousness, but you have been taken to it by somewhere. That is management.
Yeah.
That is management.
You're actually right.
A child does not want to go to school, but it is the duty of the parent to send him to the school by somewhere or other. So that is government's duty, that a man should be employed according to his capacity. There should be no unemployment. That is very dangerous position of the society. Now this unemployment question is very strong all over the world. They will plan that this government is not good, that system is not good, it's not good, and he'll do nothing. He'll personally do nothing. That's why the hippies, they criticize everyone, but he'll not do everything. All these descriptions are there in the Srimad Bhagavatam.
So this is so true for the social media age we are living in. Twitter, especially Twitter, and all other. My God, people criticize so much. Just what Srila Prabhupada is saying here. They will criticize, they will say this is not good, that good, but they will not do anything.
Nimai Prabhu, your sound quality of your voice is really down.
Oh yeah? How about now? How is it now?
Yeah, better.
Better? Okay. So now they keep saying, in social media, when it's so easy to do it behind a curtain, invisible curtain, the same mentality is carrying on.
You are going too far. Employ from the government to utilize this land. Everywhere you will find. Everywhere you will find. Who was with me in London?
Yeah. Last time.
Last month.
Yeah.
So much land.
Yeah.
Huh? They have taken it into consideration that what is the use of working in the land. Better kill one animal and eat easily. Because he doesn't care for sinful activities. If I can eat the cow, why shall I take so much trouble to till the... This is going on all over.
Employment means not.
So I didn't understand it till I saw it personally. This idea of tilling the land and trying to grow vegetables, grains, root crops, it is tough. And then you have to can it, and then you have to cook it and such. But then you can put a cow there whole day. You don't have to be there, do anything practically. You just make a fence. There should be a water, and once a day or once even after every week you can go and check. You don't care if one or two cows die. So the ranches, that's how it's developed so much. It's much more easy to produce food if one puts like cows and such. Just let them go around and eat, and come once in a while check, and then after they are 1 year old or 6 months old even, slaughter them and use the meat. So that's what it is, so much more easy. But it does take a lot of land. It's about 10 times more land it takes. And if one has to fatten the animal faster and more economic considerations come, then you want to feed more grains to it to fatten up faster. So then the grains take up so much more space. And those grains, so that's how the whole farming system, like most of the grains which are grown in the world are for beef. Soybean and corn. That's the main crop which is grown in the world. Because, and for that to happen, even though it is tilling the land, well, that is why the civilization has gone in such a manner that, oh, we can grow, let us make efficient methods to grow grain so that we don't have to spend more time, more people there. So huge machinery is employed to till at one time. Like almost half an acre is tilled by the machine at one time. It's so huge machines. So huge, like thousands of acres they can till. Those kind of machines are there. And then also the fertilizers, the pesticides, then you kill the land after a few years, but don't care, grow the grain as much as possible and to feed the cows. Finally, not so much work. The, the production per person to grow meat per pound is so much lesser. But the effects on the cost, even the financial effects on the climate and the health and the consciousness, it is so much more that is not seen in the society. So it is just like immediate gain. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here.
Nowadays to get the money and not to work. No.
This employment, even for the woman, charkha. You see, Gandhi also studied this. There must be a woman should be engaged for weaving. What is called spinning. Spinning, yes. Everyone should win. That is management.
I want to discuss this part. This is a very important part. Prabhupada was saying, okay, women should be engaged in spinning. Now, this is exactly we were discussing last week too. How much time and energy to take to produce different basic necessities. Let's say cloth is a basic necessity. So Srila Prabhupada is saying we should spin, and people used to do that even before the spinning machine comes. Even after that, the whole Mahatma Gandhi, the whole thing, one of the symbols of non-cooperation was that instead of getting milled cloth, or let me give the background. So India produced a lot of cotton all over the country. A lot of the area is easily cultivable by cotton. I'm talking about 100 years back, more than that. So then what happened? Even now, cotton is produced, but not that much. But so this cotton people used to use and weave, like spin. You take cotton out and then you spin and make thread by the spinning machine, and then thread then through the weaving machines is weaved into cloth, and then the tailor makes it into uh, a dress. So what the British government did was they took the raw cotton from India, exported it to British cities, especially Manchester, and they were big mills. Even they were created for this cotton coming from India and also other places in the world. And then this spinning, this thread was used to weave cloths. Then it was exported back to India. So an Indian, because weaving, when you do in machine, you can bring it down to much more finer cloth by the thread can be made much smaller, but once you are doing it by hand, it is not so fine. It is a little bit hard, a little bit larger. And so the cloth which was made was not so uh, fine in India now. Mahatma Gandhi, he started showing part of disobedience, like what's it called? Disobedience to the what's the whole thing called this
British Raj.
non-cooperation movement he started. So which was that you don't buy anything from England. You produce everything from the villages. What his thinking was, which Srila Prabhupada really liked, which was that in the villages is a production economy. You produce in the village. You don't consume from outside. You produce everything, like small units everywhere they are producing. And then they are trading among themselves because every village cannot produce everything. Climate and locations, everything, people, everything will be different. So, so you produce something here, produce something there, and then you are trading between the villages. So that's how the economic system used to be even 150 years back in India, and many places in other countries still they are called undeveloped countries. They are still like that. Now, what happened is the Britishers, when they started taking the mills and so many other things, but this was a symbol because this was such a basic necessity, cloth. So now the villagers, they were selling the cotton for, let's say, $1 a pound. I'm not saying it was, I'm just taking an example, $1 a pound. Now, but they were getting the cloth back from England, imported out for, let's say, $10 a pound, the whole final product. So in $9 was going out of the village instead of coming into the village. So this is how the wealth was taken out. It's not like plundering wealth and going into the temples and taking out all the different jewels and king's treasury. Not those kind of plundering. This was the main plundering. This is how the whole consumer, the capitalistic culture plunders out the wealth from the village unit. Now, this cloth still it exists. There are people who are doing by hand, and that hand cloth, which is spinned and then weaved, is called khadi. It's a very it is very it is a little rough cloth, thicker, and it has good duration, last longer. And it is, I mean, it's not like a fine gentleman cloth, like this. So which is why this has continued on. There is a market for it. So question is now, Srila Prabhupada is saying here the women should spin, and like that. It's an example he's taking to so that everyone should be engaged. So now problem what happens is it's not just women, men, or anybody. When machines come in, now what happens is other places also he has made the point, when machine comes in, less people are required. Just like tilling, when there is tractor, immediately 10 people are not required. We see it all the time. So now what will those other 9 people do? One person is driving tractor, 9 person are not tilling, and so then what do the 9 people do? Of course, this is the whole society. This whole thing is trying to find work for them in some other, like mills and office work and so many other work in the city. She's probably making the point that, listen, you instead of being engaged in so much to get money to live, to buy basic necessities, why don't you work for your basic necessities? You don't have to pay somebody else, or pay within the village, exchange your services. Gift economy. Srila Prabhupada, many times this was the Vedic system earlier. So now, see, this ideal thing, which ideal meaning, this is how the natural sphere of how God is created is like that. It's not like ideal, it's just the way the world has been created to function like this. The problem what we face now is how to go back to it, how fast, and whether even we should do that so much, when our main purpose is actually to chant Hare Krishna and hear about Lord, think about the Lord, purify ourselves, become the servant, remove all the conditioning, remove all the other anathas, and surrender to the Lord's lotus feet and serve Him in whichever capacity, and especially in teaching and sharing the same method which helped us purifying and give pleasure, which is Sankirtan. So that is the main focus. So how much time should we spend? Like now he's saying women should spin. So now, okay, so they start spinning. Then first somebody has to produce, let's say, hemp here in the Northeast in the US. And that's a good example. That was a replacement. Very hard cloth to grow and to spin and make from that. The dress is rough. So one has to spend time doing it. Then one has to harvest, clean, and then spin, then weave, then make the dress. So you see how much time and energy it would take. Now, problem what I have found is people who are not used to it, especially nobody has grown up. None of us in our sphere, my sphere of activities, have grown up uh, doing all these things. We have probably seen in movies, or we have seen in books, we have seen in scripture, just like we can picture something like this. Or in US, we have seen in these, what are they called? Historic live history museums, where you see people how they used to live earlier, and they do these kind of things. This is like a museum thing, artifact. But to actually start doing it, not only the knowledge gap is there, but the main thing is habit, the mind and the habit. It is so vast that it becomes like, is it natural right now? This is the question one should ask. We should ask whether we should do that. Can we do it? Now, how, of course, this is the direction the society needs to go. An alternative society should show an example, but the question to be asked is the example, like, what is the extent of that example that can be shown, which doesn't look so impractical to the people that they think, oh, these people are like crazy, loony people. And instead of being an example, it's a laughing stock. Because what may happen is that people, when we like try to make it like this is the value system, oh, we should all do this right now, spinning and weaving, growing cloth and everything, instead of going to Macy's or Walmart and buying cloth, and in 5 minutes it takes to go and buy, and so cheap that it is like nothing. So in that process itself, the devotees whom one is making a value system and they're thinking, oh, we should do that, and peer pressure then comes and everything, and then in that whole thing, they may even lose the whole consciousness of being in the community, feeling little inept, feeling, oh, I'm not good for this, oh, I can't, it's too hard. My whole consciousness gets focused on trying to spin and weave and everything, rather than on buying the cloth, little bit work, and then chanting. Dhaneshwar Maharaj, to hear from you.
Yes. Yes, everything is cheaper to buy in the store, but we don't know the price that's paid by somebody else who is exploited in the extreme. Okay? You go to Disney World, you buy a Mickey Mouse cap. They sell them for $20. The person who's making that in Korea or China is getting paid 5 cents to sew that. The Apple phone, for example, costs $5 to make. The factory that assembled those phones were exploiting the people to such a degree that they had to put up nets around the building to catch people from jumping off the roof. I worked in a factory years ago that made car seats for an automobile. I also worked in Ford Motor Company's iron foundry, casting engine blocks. We like to have a nice car, but we don't even think about how many people are exploited to produce these things. They have no life. The only way these people can survive is intoxication. But I worked in the iron foundry. I was a young man in between college. And I couldn't imagine people, the men there would say they've been there 30, 40 years. I couldn't imagine how they could do it, how I could do it for more than, the summer holiday. So there's a hidden cost behind everything that most people, they don't look at, and in many cases don't want to look at. Now, as far as it being difficult to produce these things, you give the example of spinning, weaving, and so on. There's millions of women in the United States who do this as a hobby. You can go to craft stores, and there's all kinds of women who are engaged in textile arts just because it's satisfying for them to do. So it's not something Stone Age or anything like that. It's a satisfying way of life when you can create what you're producing, when you can create rather what you're wearing. People become proud of that. As far as it being counterproductive in terms of time, it may appear that way for a short time. However, modern society is a house of cards, and it can unravel. Everybody knows you played that game as a child. You start pulling out cards, and pretty soon the whole thing collapses very quickly. So modern society is like that. When it collapses, trying to get the materials together to produce to do weaving or anything like that is going to be 100 times harder than it would be with before that time. So we can't be thinking about the immediate future. We have to be thinking with a long-term vision. Srila Prabhupada was looking with a long-term vision about these things. You can't, if you just, it's just like anything else. What you're doing here, Nimai. you've got a long-term vision. You acquire this property not for your immediate use. You don't need a farm personally, but you're doing this for other people with a long-term vision that, yes, we want to have this for a purpose of training people. So there's many, many things to think about in this. I would highly recommend read my spiritual economics book. In that book, I explain how India was exploited by the British also, and how they do this all over the world. That's why you have cheap things. Not that what was exploited comes back to India more expensive, but it goes to America and it goes to Britain 10 times cheaper than what they can produce it for themselves. So we have to consider there's a lot more to the picture than what you've just been describing.
Anyone else? Before I also jump in again. Jessica Mataji made the point, which Dhaneshwar Maharaj, you were also saying. I can read it, or if she's here, if she can read it, she can say the same thing. She
I'm
said,
here.
yeah,
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Yeah, I was just that those were really excellent points. I enjoyed hearing that perspective, Prabhuji. I was just saying what I wrote in the chat is just that there is a local movement for knitting, not spinning cotton, here amongst young people and even people my age, just to show the children we can make a sweater ourselves or a scarf or hats for winter. We can make it for the community if we have the capability, and we can get the yarn here in our town. Now, in my situation, that's available, but it's not just here in New York, it's everywhere. And of course, we're in a different situation because we're educating the children at home. So we can take them for the sheep shearing, which is here on our right down the street. They can see the sheep being raised all year. We know the farmer. They learn to knit, but it's a small part of their lives. But it's, at least in my mind, it's in the backdrop of their reality. They see it and they can start to juxtapose between going to Target or slowly making something at home. And then, of course, learning that. How it will transition to them potentially doing it as a part of everyday life, that's the bigger question. We can only do a small part, but it's actually there, but it can, in small ways, it can become very entertaining for people. So for example, in our homeschool group, which has about 50 kids in it, we have a knitting class almost every semester, and some kids will join it, where we teach basic knitting. We're not teaching them spinning right now, although we have we have actually in our homeschool group, out of those families, there's 2 women that have sheep and spin, 2 mothers. So we do get those groups together and show that to the children, and some kids eagerly want to pursue knitting as a hobby, of course, from the local yarn. So it's there, but it has to be cultivated and sort of brought into a group setting. But there are so many groups, almost at every library, there's a knitting circle that meets every week. So it's something that could be cultivated on a larger scale, like, knitting on a farm and being there and seeing and being a part of that process. But its application to daily life, that kind of has to be bridging the gap from this being an interesting hobby to something that has a real value and is brought forward into everyday life.
Oh, very good. This is a very good point to discuss. So both of you, there are 2 points which I'm making. I'm going to put it in the chat. Just give me a second. So these are the 2 questions are, what like in the example of this this wool itself. Now you see the people are doing only the good part, the easy part. The hard part is one is raising sheep. That is also not so difficult. But after shearing, see, one has to clean the wool. They are sending those people also, everybody. We tried it. Then I came to know what the problem is. So we got these goats. We started shearing, pashmina, the wool from these goats, Kashmir goats. Now, how do I clean it? You can't clean it it's just so troublesome to clean it by hand. It goes sit like this. You send it to even earlier, people used to do that. They used to have these hand things by which they would clean. There's some kind of tools to do that. No one does it by hand even earlier. But those are not available all around. So there are these mills, small scale, you can send them wool to clean, but they also have a minimum quantity. So me and you, our wool is still there because we haven't still reached the minimum quantity. See, these are practical problems. So let's say these people, this farmer, New Paul's farmer, no, Jessica Mataji, nearby. So they have the sheep and some wool from the sheep, but most of the wool that they have in the store is not from their store, from their farm. This is just basically they are cultivating the interest of the people. Oh, there is the sheep, there is the wool, there is the woolen thread here in the store. But probably 10, maybe 5%, 10% of the wool threads that you see in the store is from the farm. You can't. It's just impossible to do it, because first you have to clean it. Minimum quantity you require of that particular to send it. Then when it comes after the cleaning, then it is sent somewhere else to spin it. So spinning also, it's an art. It is not like anybody can start doing it, because it also comes down to you can harm your fingers too, and you can break the machine very often. You need to have a trained supervision where the knowledge is so less, right? It's not like a normal thing which one does like driving car. Anybody, you can go anywhere and learn. Standard, you can learn. Now even the spinning machines, like the by hand or by feet, who will fix them if they break down? Where are the spare parts? Where are the people who know how to do all of that? It's like, it's so easy to say, oh, you should spin. I'm not saying Srila Prabhupada is saying like that. He's giving us an ideal. He's telling us to come to that level. The point is for us, how soon should we jump into it? We have to go gradually. If our whole consciousness then becomes, oh, I have to spin now, then so much trouble it is to do that. And where is chanting and where is this thing? So what Jessica Mataji is telling, the interest and the thought process, what this farmer has done is great. 5, 10, they have certain sheep, 50, maybe 70, 80, whatever. Then they shear it. The children see it. They develop the interest. Then in the store, they go and buy a lot of wool, so not from the farm, but a lot of wool, and they knit. Knit is the easiest part, even though difficult for us, but many of the women, it is the easiest part of the whole process. So it is good that is at least they are doing, but it is really tough. The second point of the
Is
whole,
your argument that we shouldn't do it? Is that where are you going with that? Yeah,
my point
yeah,
is
it's
that
difficult. At Gitanagari, the president's wife, we had sheep there. She cut the wool, carded the wool, cleaned the wool, spun it, made a sweater for Srila Prabhupada, and he was so happy with that. He was so very, very happy. So yes, it's hard, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. Life is hard, okay, but once you learn it, it's not so hard anymore.
please, Jessica.
Also to that, I just wanted to clarify a little because what you're saying is absolutely true. In the majority of cases for, let's say, knitting, these people are just going to Michael's craft store and they're actually not even buying wool. It's actually synthetic yarn. It's polyamide or like polyester yarn.
Yeah.
However,
To work
the
with.
smaller movement that I'm talking about, we actually are getting the yarn from the farm. So like this White Barn farm here in New Paltz, it's a small flock of sheep, but she is dyeing it or selling the actual wool. It has been carded, it's been cleaned. Or she takes it to the local, there's like a local person who spins it. But we can buy her yarn. It's for sale on the street. So like right past our house here, there's a shack. It's called the Yarn Shack. Her yarn is there. So if we need yarn, like actually, Prabhuji, when your mother came, that's where I took her here.
I remember.
Because that yarn shack was there, she could see the yarn, and next to that shack is the sheep. That's where it's come from. Now they do not clean it there, they shear it there. But that's the yarn from that farm. And actually, what's happening right now is there's a huge movement for spinning from the raw wool. And every autumn, there's actually, they say it's the largest in the Western world. Wool and Sheep Festival is in Rhinebeck. And you have hundreds, maybe 1,000 people that come from all over the world, and they sell the foot spinning wheel right there. And women are sitting all over spinning, and children. So there is that movement to actually be involved in the process of spinning it oneself. It's become really vogue, like an in vogue thing. So it's definitely, if there's interest in it, this is a good time because people actually want to do it from scratch. It's even more enjoyable for them. In this subculture. I'm not saying this is like going on in the public arena, but public school, I mean for kids. But it's there. People want to be involved from the very beginning. If that interest is there.
And my question is, you're raising these, you're taking care of these goats for what? For their wool, right? So somebody's buying that.
Nobody is buying it.
Nobody. Okay, Jessica will take it, right? Angora wool.
The problem is that we need a certain quantity, minimum quantity to give it to the people to clean it, thread it, spin it.
Minimum quantity for what? Selling it?
For a batch. Maharaj, the thing is the wool, when it comes out, no, it needs to be cleaned. Like
Correct.
literally, like if you don't have a machine, you have to go like piece by piece and clean it. You see, so it's not so easy to so if you give it to somebody to do it, they need a minimum batch.
Jessica, what do you think? What's your minimum batch?
Yeah, I can't, unfortunately, I can speak only to the prior comment that you were making is I'm in the knitting side of this. It's actually my difficulty, not difficulty, but just teaching the kids to knit and keeping their interest alive in that project. That's the only place that I'm at right now. Forget me carding this wool, spinning it. Yes, that would be nice, but again, the time isn't there right now.
Yeah. Well,
If you have a community.
Yeah, this is a problem for modern society. We have no time.
Correct.
But in simple living, I think in culture, this is what you do in the winter, right? When you're inside and you've got nothing but time.
Correct. You have to have it in the culture of a community too, because like anything with kids, if you have a whole group of people and all the kids are engaged in it, it becomes something of interest. Otherwise, it's me as one lady sitting here and saying, okay, everybody, we're going to now spin all of this wool.
I'll go watch my TV show and you do this work.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's you need the peer companionship and it to be in a culture, it's like becomes a norm for kids if that's there. So we're nowhere near in our house going and getting the raw wool and spinning it. It would be nice. I mean, I love it, but
it's all step by step. Anybody who gets into that stage, it's a gradual process. You don't start there. That's where you wind up. And
right.
so that's what I'm always suggesting is to devotees, we take this up as a hobby. Okay, the group I'm speaking to in Croatia, I tell them, we begin as a hobby. And then as you take it up as a hobby, your interest in it develops and you'll go further and further into it. You can't start at the end. You start at the beginning.
So it's exactly the point. Now we are coming to almost the close of it. So if I can summarize, the Dhaneshwar Maharaj, is that you said, it is hard, so should we not do it? Now, my point is, Maharaj, what Jessica Mata also said, and now you also said, it's a step by step. You start with a hobby, you start slowly, just like this. You have, like we have the goats, they have the sheep, then we take it, then we develop that, send it to somebody else to clean and weave it, or sorry, the spin it. Then it comes as a thread. More interest is there in knitting, so we fan that interest. So, but if you see, that's where I'm coming to, that how much time and energy and focus should be there of the community in it. Think what I have come to the conclusion after this personal experience of this over so many years doing it, 15 years I'm trying to do this, then I've come to the conclusion right now, the current situation, the people around, the way it's going to be a few generations where we would see this. The step by step.
You're not going to survive several generations. This
No.
world is not going to continue the way it is.
Well, the
I'm
thing is that if the Lord, he does something to the world by which, like in pandemic it happened, the people didn't have cloth to buy, let's say, then at that time the whole mindset changes, then it is different. But because then people are being forced to think about what to do. We can do what we can do. We can't just force it. No? When there's a normal circumstance where there is external pressure is not there, we can start just what Mother Jessica is saying. Start like that, like this is natural organic thing is happening. We can also little bit catalyst it by having these goats, having people come in, look at them, and shear the goat, makes it pleasurable. So, and my second question to on this point was also, Mother Jessica, how much of the percentage of the clothes, warm clothes that we wear would be by ourselves knitting? You see, the jackets, the inner wear, even sometimes and the hat and the muffler or the gloves. See, there is a lot to do with it, especially the jackets. It's tough to weave, and because it's so much easier. Well, I mean, I don't know if any mother would say, My children go out and play with just the sweater, like a woolen thing, and no covering to support against snow and cold and the and a wet cold, you know. So there's a person. So all of these together, if we look at it, it's going to be a step by step thing, and we can't force it until the society forces it upon. Anyway, that's what I wanted to mention now. I mean,
Leo,
theory should be there. Yeah, theory should be there, like what you are writing, everything. This is how one should actually live this lifestyle. This is, but actually should live on an ideal stage. This is how God has made it. We are here currently.
Leo's eager to talk. He's got two hands up.
Oh, yeah, Leo and Balram, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna. So, just a little insight from what I've gathered in this conversation from me is just what I've noticed right now. It's almost like an act of rebellion for these type of things towards a society that we're living in on a global scale, but mostly in the Western world. What I see now is more like reuse, reduce, recycle, and that's almost the act right there. And also, these hobbies that are occurring and with these little communities. But the main thing is that there's places where it's not so much of a hobby; it's more of a way of living, based on economic situations, like in third world countries. What I wanted to state was that in order to get that catalyst where it could probably, instead of the generational situation where it's going to take a long time or until in the Western world collapses, we're going to be forced to do it, is to get people who have this way of living, who have this ancient, you could say, wisdom or just knowledge, and acquire from them in a very good way, in a good manner, so it could be an exchange. And that's my best way of thinking. There's many countries, my country, I'm sure your country too, Nimai, where there's this way of life that just exists, and it's based upon necessity. It's not so much of a hobby where it's, you have to learn how to do this and that. So I just wanted to state that, because the collapse, as Maharaj was saying, it's inevitable, and it could be nearby. But yeah, I don't know what could it be. Maybe someone going out to India or another country, etc., learning, or bringing somebody. I don't know. I just wanted to state that. I don't know if that could be something worth some type of insight.
Yeah, definitely. They are called ancient knowledge keepers. It's a term. And those people, they're like normal in India, like poor and like that in India or other countries. They are the ones who have the knowledge and the habit and the culture and the mindset to actually teach us. More we can talk later. We have only a few minutes left. To Balaram Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a kind of question with a comment, I guess, is, are we thinking too much? Is it too complicated? Are we thinking too complicated way? Because it's one angle I have is that, like, everything, as it's been mentioned by Mother Jessica and John Prabhu on the previous videos, it seems like we need the community first, devotee community. And once you have devotees, then you're going to have some talks and some screaming, oh, I don't want to work in the city anymore. I want to work on the land. I want to be in Sattva Gun. I want to work in a place, in a situation that supports my devotional practice. Therefore, now I want some land. Oh, John wants some land. Oh, David wants some land. Okay, let's come together. Let's get some land. Once there's a big enough community together and they themselves want it, it's pushed by the community. Okay, I don't want to buy my cloth anymore from Macy's. Let's get some sheep. What do we need? Okay, let's get some sheep. And so, I mean, that's just a rough example. But I mean, the community itself needs to come together. And the community, as you mentioned just now, this step-by-step process, it's not me looking forward and saying, okay, there's 3 of us now. We're going to set up a village. Okay, let's start building the prison. What the hell are we going to build a prison for? Well, we know crime's going to be there, and we know we're going to need it. Okay, but, it's just 3 of us. So, so this kind of the knitting idea or whatever idea it could be. But it's like, let's seem like the other way, where bring the community of devotees together and just let naturally the community push for what it needs, and that will happen naturally. Then if the community is pushing, you've got the community support, you've got the community will, and then you have a plan for this, and it will happen. So it seems like that the biggest thing actually that I'm struggling with, you're struggling with, is actually, how do we get together a big enough community first? To then the community itself will push for a farm community, then the farm community itself will push for this, push for this, push for this. So you know, otherwise it seems like we're trying to solve the bigger issues that will come later down the road when we just have nobody almost.
Very good point. Very good point. So it more or less like leave it to the community members to push, but Dhaneshwar Maharaj is making a very good point and writing books. So like it's not just like let it be, but there should be people like him in the community who are saying, listen, don't buy any more clothes eh, from outside. You make here. So it's like a voice of reason and voice of ideal and voice of of sanity should keep happening, hearing from Acharya like we are doing Srila Prabhupada, so that people start to also think which but people, because they are in their own work and own situation, that naturally could be enhanced by this talk and hearing. But it can't be pushed or imposed, or that, oh, you have to, or make a pressure situation, or this is the purpose of the community. We are, everybody now has to now
See,
do this.
that's a good example. Dhaneshwar Prabhu Maharaj is saying, don't buy clothes. For example, I don't know if he's saying this, but for example, don't buy clothes.
I like that idea.
But everybody he's talking to is living in the city. They're not in farm life. So they're saying, well, okay, Maharaj, you can say that, but I don't have the situation. I don't have the time to make my clothes. I'm going to Macy's and spend $5 and get my cloth solved, and I can read more channel. So until that people he's talking to have decided clearly, I don't want to live in city life anymore. I want to live in farm life. And they come. Then when they come together, then Maharaj's talk, okay, now let's not buy from outside. Everybody, yeah, okay, let's do it. You know, they have made the choices to bring that point into question. Otherwise, don't buy clothes when you're living in Istanbul or where I am. You know, no, I'm gonna go.
What I'm suggesting is, while you're in the city, you take up a hobby. Even if you grow, tomatoes in a pot on your balcony, you learn something, because we have to become producers instead of being consumers, right? The demons have arranged the world in such a way to make everybody dependent so that they can exploit them, which is why Prabhupada always told us, be self-independent. This is Prabhupada's instructions. So I'm inspired by that personally. That's what I'd like to see, and that's what I want to encourage. And the final point is that if we're going to be leaders of society, we can't follow the pack. We have to step out from the pack in order to lead. And if we're simply doing what everybody else does, they're not going to be looking to us for leadership.
Okay, Maharaj, this wonderful discussion we had. Time is up, and want to always finish a minute or two before 8, but I think I talked too much. So thank you very much. We'll meet again on Sunday, 7 a.m. New York time. Great, very good discussion. Thank you very much. And maybe we'll get more thoughts as we carry on and to discuss more deeply on this. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada
Thank you,
ki
Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
Jai Hare Krishna.